Long ago, on the vast, windswept plains of Mongolia, a baby boy was born. The year was around 1162, a time when the land was a patchwork of warring tribes. This was not a world of cities and palaces, but one of felt gurs, nomadic herds, and constant struggle. The boy was named Temüjin. His parents, Yesuge and Holun, were respected figures. Yesuge was the leader of his clan, a brave warrior known for his strength. According to legend, when Temüjin was born, he held a blood clot clutched tightly in his tiny fist. In the traditions of his people, this was seen as a powerful omen. It was a sign that this child was destined for greatness, that he would one day become a mighty leader who would hold the world in his hand. Temüjin's early life was shaped by the harsh realities of the steppe. He learned to ride a horse almost as soon as he could walk. He was taught how to hunt with a bow and arrow, not for sport, but for survival. Every day was a lesson in toughness and self-reliance. He observed the world around him with keen eyes, learning the ways of the animals, the signs of the changing seasons, and the complex relationships between the different nomadic clans. His father, Yesuge, saw the spark of leadership in his son. He made sure Temüjin understood the importance of loyalty, family, and the bonds that held their people together, even amidst the chaos and conflict that defined their existence. When Temüjin was just 9 years old, his father took him on a journey to find a future wife. This was a common practice, a way to create alliances between families and clans. They traveled to the Ongirat tribe, where Temüjin was betrothed to a girl named Borte. According to custom, he was to stay with her family for several years to learn their ways and forge a strong connection. But this plan was shattered by a terrible event. On his journey home, Yesuge stopped to share a meal with a group of Tatars, a rival tribe. They recognized him as their enemy and secretly poisoned his food. Yesuge managed to ride home, but he was dying. His death was not just a family tragedy, it was a disaster for his entire clan. The world turned upside down for young Temüjin. With his father gone, the clan's loyalty evaporated. They saw no reason to follow a woman and her young children. One morning, Holun and her family awoke to find themselves completely alone. The clan had packed up their gers and moved on, abandoning them to their fate on the unforgiving steppe. They were now outcasts, stripped of their status, their allies, and their means of survival. The boy who was once the son of a chief was now a fugitive, tasked with protecting his mother and younger siblings in a world that had turned its back on them. This brutal betrayal forged a fire in Temüjin's heart, a determination to not only survive but to one day reclaim what was lost. The years that followed were a desperate struggle. Holun, a woman of incredible strength and spirit, refused to let her family perish. She taught her children what it meant to endure. They had no herds to provide milk and meat, no clan to offer protection. They became foragers, living off the land in a way that was often looked down upon by the proud nomadic herders. Holun would gather roots and berries from the sparse vegetation. The boys, led by Temüjin, learned to fish in the Onan River and hunt for small animals like marmots and mice. Every scrap of food was a victory, every sunrise a promise of another day to fight for their lives. This period of hardship was Temüjin's harshest school, teaching him lessons of patience, resilience, and resourcefulness that he would carry with him forever. As Temüjin grew from a boy into a young man, the dangers around him intensified. He was the son of a murdered chief, a potential threat to those who had betrayed his family and others who sought power. He and his half-brother, Begtur, often clashed over leadership and resources. The tension grew until it erupted in a tragic confrontation. Feeling his authority challenged, Temüjin, along with his brother Caesar, hunted down and killed Begtur. This was a dark and brutal act, one that earned him a harsh scolding from his mother, Holun. She was horrified by the fratricide, reminding him that they had only shadows for friends. This event showed the ruthless side of Temüjin, a willingness to eliminate rivals that would later define his military campaigns. But it also taught him a bitter lesson about the cost of internal division. The family's status as outcasts made them vulnerable to attack. One day, the Taichud clan, the very people who had abandoned them, returned. They feared that Temüjin, now growing strong, would one day seek revenge. They captured him, forcing him to wear a wooden collar, a kang, which was a symbol of total humiliation and helplessness. For a proud Mongol, this was a fate worse than death. Yet even in this desperate situation, Temüjin did not surrender to despair. He watched his captors, learning their routines, waiting for the right moment. He knew that his survival depended not just on physical strength, but on his ability to think, to plan, and to seize any opportunity that presented itself. During a festival, when his guards were drunk and distracted, Temüjin made his move. Despite the heavy Kang, he struck a guard and fled into the night. He hid in the river with only his head above the water, until the search parties passed. He was found by a sympathetic man from a different clan who, seeing the fire in the young man's eyes, decided to help him. This man, Sorkhan Shira, hid Temüjin in a cart of wool and later provided him with a horse and a weapon, allowing him to escape and find his family. This escape was a turning point. It proved that Temüjin possessed not only physical courage but also a clever mind and an ability to inspire loyalty even in strangers. He had survived the ultimate test and emerged stronger and more determined than ever. Having escaped his captors and reunited with his family, Temüjin understood he could not survive alone. The steppe was a web of alliances, and he needed powerful friends to reclaim his place in the world. He remembered his father's closest ally, a powerful chieftain of the Karait tribe named Togrul. At the time, Togrul was known by the title Wang Khan. Temüjin traveled to the Wang Khan's court, presenting him with a precious gift, a beautiful black sable coat, which had been part of his wife Borda's dowry. He declared himself the Wang Khan's son and pledged his loyalty. This was a masterful political move. By invoking his father's memory and offering a valuable gift, Temüjin placed himself under the protection of one of the most powerful men in Mongolia, gaining a crucial ally. Around this same time, Temüjin strengthened another important bond, one forged in childhood. He sought out Jamuka, a boy from a different clan with whom he had sworn an oath of brotherhood. They had become Anda, blood brothers, a sacred and unbreakable bond in Mongol culture. They had exchanged gifts and vowed to be loyal to each other for life. When they reunited as young men, they renewed their oath. For a time, they lived and camped together, their clans joined as one. Their friendship was a source of great strength. Jamuka was charismatic and popular, a natural leader from a more aristocratic lineage. Together they seemed like an unstoppable force, two brilliant young warriors destined to lead their people to a new era of prosperity and power. The most important alliance in Temüjin's life was personal. After years of hardship, he returned to the Ongirat tribe to claim his betrothed bride, Borte. Her family had remained loyal to the promise made so many years ago, and they welcomed him. The marriage to Borte was more than just a union of two people. It was a strategic alliance that brought him status and powerful in-laws. Borte was not just a wife, but a trusted advisor and his staunchest supporter. Her intelligence, grace, and unwavering belief in him provided a stable foundation upon which he could build his ambitions. She was the anchor of his family and his life, the one constant through all the turmoil and violence that was to come. These three relationships with Wang Khan, Jamuka, and Bort formed the cornerstone of Temüjin's early rise. The alliance with Wang Khan gave him political legitimacy and military protection. The brotherhood with Jamuka provided him with a powerful partner and a combined force of warriors. The marriage to Borte gave him a family, a home, and a connection to a respectable clan. Each bond was a thread in the tapestry of his growing power. Temüjin was no longer just an outcast fighting for survival. He was a young leader with a growing network of friends and allies, positioning himself to not only reclaim his father's legacy, but to forge an entirely new destiny for himself and his people. The fragile peace of Temüjin's new life was soon shattered. The steppe was a dangerous place, and old grudges died hard. One night, the Merkit tribe, enemies of Temüjin's father, staged a surprise raid on his camp. They sought revenge for a bride Yasuge had stolen from them years before. In the chaos of the attack, Temüjin managed to escape on horseback, but his wife Borte was captured. This was a devastating blow, a profound personal humiliation, and a direct challenge to his honor as a husband and a leader. For Temüjin, this was not just a personal tragedy. It was a public declaration of his weakness. He knew that if he failed to rescue his wife, he would lose all respect and his ambitions would turn to dust. Overwhelmed and outnumbered, Temüjin knew he could not face the Merkits alone. He turned to the alliances he had so carefully built. He went first to his powerful patron Wang Khan, and then to his blood brother Jamuka. He pleaded for their help, reminding them of their oaths and his loyalty. Both men agreed to help him. Wang Khan saw an opportunity to assert his power and reward a loyal follower. Jamuka, true to his oath of brotherhood, immediately rallied his warriors. Together, they assembled a formidable army, a combined force of thousands of horsemen. The mission to rescue Borte became a massive military campaign, the first that Temüjin would help lead. After months of planning and gathering their forces, the Allied army descended upon the unsuspecting Merkit camp. The attack was swift and brutal. Temüjin rode through the chaos, desperately calling out his wife's name. In the midst of the battle, Borte heard his voice and revealed herself. Their reunion was a moment of profound relief and triumph. The rescue was a resounding success, and the Merkit tribe was utterly defeated. This victory was a pivotal moment in Temüjin's life. He had faced a terrible crisis, marshaled his allies, and emerged victorious. His reputation as a courageous and determined leader soared. He had proven that he would stop at nothing to protect his family and honor his commitments. The rescue of Borte had lasting consequences that went far beyond the battlefield. It cemented his alliances with Wang Khan and Jamuka, demonstrating the power of their combined strength. More importantly, it solidified his own authority. He was no longer just the son of a minor chief. He was a warrior who had led a great army to victory. The experience taught him invaluable lessons about strategy, logistics, and leadership. Borte returned to him, and soon after, she gave birth to their first son, Yoki. Though questions of Yoki's paternity would linger, Temüjin accepted him as his own. The crisis had tested him to his limits, but he had transformed it into a legendary victory that became a cornerstone of his legacy. After the triumphant rescue of Borte, Temüjin's ambitions began to shift. He was no longer content with merely surviving or reclaiming his father's status. He had seen firsthand how the constant infighting between the Mongol tribes made them all vulnerable. The endless cycle of raids, betrayals, and revenge kept his people weak and divided. Temüjin started to dream of something bigger, something no one had ever achieved before, uniting all the people of the felt-walled tents under a single banner. He envisioned a nation where loyalty was not to a clan or a family, but to a unified Mongol people, led by a single, strong ruler. This was a revolutionary idea in a world defined by tribal rivalry. To achieve this grand vision, Temüjin knew he needed a new way of organizing his followers. In the traditional Mongol system, leadership was based on birthright. Power belonged to the aristocrats, the descendants of noble lineages, regardless of their actual ability. Temüjin rejected this system. He believed that a man's worth should be judged by his skill, his courage, and his loyalty, not by who his ancestors were. He began to promote his most capable warriors to positions of command, even if they came from the humblest backgrounds. This was a radical departure from tradition, and it attracted many talented and ambitious men to his side, people who were ignored by the old aristocratic system. One of his most significant innovations was the reorganization of his army. Instead of warriors fighting with their relatives in clan-based units, Temüjin created a decimal system. He organized his soldiers into units of 10, 100, 1,000, and 10,000. These units were mixed, containing men from different clans and tribes. This broke down old tribal loyalties and forged a new unified identity. A soldier's primary allegiance was now to his squad mates and his commander, and ultimately to Temüjin himself. This merit-based, decimal structure made his army incredibly disciplined, flexible, and efficient, a stark contrast to the chaotic tribal levies of his rivals. This new philosophy of meritocracy extended beyond the battlefield. Temüjin valued competence in all its forms. He listened to advice from everyone, from his wife Borte to the lowliest captured servant. He understood that a strong nation needed more than just warriors. It needed skilled administrators, clever diplomats, and loyal followers. By rewarding talent and loyalty above all else, he created a powerful sense of purpose and belonging among his people. They were no longer just scattered clans fighting for scraps. They were part of a great project, a movement to build a new and powerful nation. This inspiring vision was the magnetic force that drew more and more people to his banner. As Temüjin's influence grew, his revolutionary ideas put him on a collision course with the old Mongol aristocracy, and most tragically with his own blood brother, Jamuka. While Temüjin promoted men based on merit, Jamuka remained a firm believer in the traditional system of aristocratic rule. He was a prince by birth and believed that only those of noble blood were fit to lead. The followers who flocked to Temüjin were often commoners, shepherds, and hunters, drawn by his promise of a society where anyone could rise through skill and effort. In contrast, Jamuka's supporters were the established clan leaders and nobles, who felt threatened by Temüjin's radical changes. The two friends, once inseparable, began to drift apart. The ideological rift between them soon became a personal one. They camped together for a time after Borte's rescue, but their different leadership styles created friction. Temüjin was methodical and disciplined, while Jamuka was more charismatic and perhaps more impulsive. The final break came over a seemingly small incident involving the best place to camp. Jamuka made a comment that was interpreted as an assertion of his superiority, and Temüjin, sensing the growing divide, decided it was time to separate. That night, many of Jamuka's own followers, including shepherds and lower-class warriors, chose to leave with Temüjin. They saw in him a leader who valued them for who they were, not for their lineage. This mass defection was a public humiliation for Jamuka, and turned their friendship into a bitter rivalry. The conflict with Jamuka was not just a personal feud. It was a battle for the soul of the Mongol people. It was a clash between two opposing visions for the future: Jamuka's traditional, aristocratic confederation versus Temüjin's unified, meritocratic nation. The tribal elites, fearing the loss of their inherited privileges, rallied around Jamuka. They saw Temüjin as a dangerous upstart who threatened to overturn the entire social order. This set the stage for a long and bloody civil war. The steppe became a chessboard for these two great leaders, with clans and tribes constantly shifting their allegiances, caught between the pull of tradition and the promise of a new beginning. The rivalry escalated into open warfare. Jamuka, supported by a coalition of tribes loyal to the old ways, was elected Gur Khan, or universal ruler, by his followers, a direct challenge to Temüjin's rising power. He became the champion of the aristocracy, the last great obstacle standing in the way of Temüjin's dream of unification. The bond of the Anda, once the most sacred oath a Mongol could swear, was broken by their competing ambitions. The struggle between the two blood brothers would dominate the next 2 decades of Mongol history, a violent and tragic conflict that would ultimately decide the fate of their people and pave the way for the creation of a new empire. The long war for control of the Mongol steppe was a brutal education for Temüjin. His first major confrontation with Jamuka was the Battle of Dalan Baljut, or the 70 Marshes. At this early stage, Jamuka's coalition was stronger, and Temüjin suffered a significant defeat. He was forced to retreat, his forces scattered, but it was in this loss that Temüjin showed his true genius. Instead of despairing, he analyzed his mistakes. He learned that raw courage was not enough. He needed better organization, stricter discipline, and more reliable intelligence about his enemies. He also witnessed Jamuka's cruelty firsthand. After the battle, Jamuka had the captured chieftains who supported Temüjin boiled alive in 70 large cauldrons. This horrific act repulsed many potential allies and drove them toward Temüjin's more disciplined and just leadership. Temüjin spent the next several years rebuilding his strength, refining his military structure, and forging new alliances. He absorbed the lessons of his defeat, focusing on creating an army that was not just powerful, but also completely loyal to him. He continued to promote commanders based on merit, creating a corps of brilliant generals like Jebi and Subutai, who would serve him faithfully for decades. He learned to use spies and scouts effectively, to master the arts of surprise attacks and feigned retreats. He was not just fighting battles, he was building a superior war machine, one that was more resilient, adaptable, and unified than any army the steppe had ever seen before. Every skirmish, whether a victory or a defeat, was a chance to learn and improve. The decisive clash came in the Battle of the 13 Sides, where Temüjin and his ally Wang Khan faced a massive coalition led by Jamuka. This was a sprawling and chaotic battle involving nearly every major tribe on the steppe. The fighting was fierce, and at one point, Temüjin was wounded by an arrow to the neck. He was saved by the quick thinking and unwavering loyalty of his companion, Jelmi, who sucked the poisoned blood from the wound and snuck into the enemy camp to fetch him curdled milk to drink. Despite the chaos and his own injury, Temüjin's forces, disciplined and better led, eventually prevailed. The coalition under Jamuka was shattered, a testament to the superiority of Temujin's new military system. After this climactic battle, Jamuka's power was broken. He became a fugitive, his followers having either deserted to Temujin or been killed. Eventually he was betrayed by his own remaining companions, who delivered him to Temujin, hoping for a reward. Temujin, however, executed these traitors, stating that he could not reward disloyalty. In a final tragic meeting, Temujin offered to renew his brotherhood with Jamuka, but Jamuka refused, stating that there could only be one sun in the sky. He asked for a noble death, one without the shedding of blood, as was befitting a man of his rank. Temujin granted his request, and Jamuka's back was broken. With the death of his greatest rival, the path was finally clear for Temujin to become the sole ruler of the Mongol people. With all his rivals defeated and the Mongol tribes united under his command for the first time in history, Temujin called for a great assembly, a Kurultai. In the spring of 1206, at the headwaters of the Onan River where his journey had begun, thousands of Mongol leaders and their families gathered. They raised a great white banner with the symbol of a falcon, and, in a grand ceremony, they proclaimed Temujin as the ruler of all the people of the steppe. It was here that he was given a new title, one that would echo through history, Genghis Khan. The name's exact meaning is debated, but it is often translated as oceanic ruler or universal ruler, signifying the vastness of his power and ambition. This was more than just a coronation, it was the birth of a nation. Genghis Khan used the Kurultai to formally establish the laws and structure of his new state. He proclaimed the Yasa, a secret code of laws that would govern the Mongol people. The Yasa covered everything from military discipline to property rights and personal behavior. It forbade kidnapping women, outlawed theft, and mandated religious freedom for all. Most importantly, it made loyalty to the Khan the supreme virtue. By creating a single, unified legal code for all tribes, Genghis Khan replaced the chaos of clan feuds with the order of a centralized state. The Yasa was the foundation of his empire. At the Kurultai, Genghis Khan publicly rewarded those who had been loyal to him throughout his long struggle. He honored the men who had saved him, the warriors who had fought bravely, and the families who had stood by him during his darkest days. He organized his new nation as he had organized his army. He created a personal bodyguard, the Keshig, an elite force of 10,000 warriors drawn from the sons of his commanders and allies. Serving in the Keshig was a great honor and also a way for the Khan to keep the sons of powerful men close, ensuring their loyalty. This act of creating a structured government and rewarding loyalty solidified his rule and transformed the Mongol world. The Kurultai of 1206 marked the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Temujin, the outcast boy, was gone. In his place stood Genghis Khan, the leader of a new, unified, and powerful Mongol nation. He had fulfilled his vision of uniting the tribes of the steppe. But, his ambition did not end there. He believed he had a divine mandate from the eternal blue sky, the Mongol deity Tengri, to rule the entire world. The discipline, organization, and military might he had forged in the crucible of the Mongol civil wars were now ready to be unleashed upon the settled civilizations that lay beyond the plains of Mongolia. With the Mongol tribes united behind him, Genghis Khan turned his eyes outward. His first major campaign was not against a distant foreign power, but against the Tangut people of the Western Xia Kingdom, located to the south of Mongolia. The Western Xia controlled vital trade routes and had once demanded tribute from the Mongols. Now, Genghis Khan intended to reverse that relationship. This campaign served as a crucial training ground for his new army. They learned how to attack fortified cities, a type of warfare completely different from the open field battles of the steppe. After a series of campaigns, the Western Xia were defeated and became a vassal state, providing the Mongols with wealth, resources, and valuable experience in siege warfare. Next, Genghis Khan turned his attention to a much greater prize, the powerful Jin dynasty of northern China. The Jin had long been an enemy of the steppe peoples, often manipulating the tribes to keep them weak and divided. For Genghis Khan, this was a war of revenge and conquest. The Mongol army, though outnumbered, was faster, more disciplined, and more adaptable than the massive Jin forces. They swarmed across the Great Wall and into Chinese territory. They learned to use new technologies, employing captured Chinese engineers to build siege engines like catapults and battering rams. In 1215, The Mongols captured the Jin capital of Zhongdu, which is now modern-day Beijing, a stunning victory that sent shockwaves across Asia. While his armies were fighting in the east, an incident in the west opened up a new front. Genghis Khan had sought to establish trade relations with the wealthy Khwarezmian Empire, a vast Muslim state stretching across what is now Iran, Afghanistan, and Central Asia. He sent a trade caravan to the Khwarezmian city of Otrar, but the governor, suspecting them of being spies, had them all killed and seized their goods. This was a grave insult that could not be ignored. When a second envoy sent by the Khan was also executed by the Shah of Khwarezm, Genghis Khan's fury was unleashed. He abandoned his war against the Jin and prepared for a massive invasion to the west. The campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire was one of the most remarkable in military history. Genghis Khan launched a multi-pronged invasion, leading an army of over 100,000 warriors across some of the most difficult terrain in the world, including the brutal Kizilkum Desert. His generals, Jebe and Subutai, executed brilliant flanking maneuvers, appearing where the enemy least expected them. The Khwarezmian forces, though large, were disunited and poorly led. One by one, the great cities of the Silk Road, Bukhara, Samarkand, Urgench, fell to the Mongol onslaught. The invasion was devastating, but it showcased the incredible strategic genius and logistical mastery of Genghis Khan and his commanders, opening the west to Mongol power. Genghis Khan's methods of conquest were a fearsome combination of brutality and brilliance. When a city resisted his army, the consequences were often terrifying. The Mongols would systematically slaughter the population, sparing only artisans, engineers, and other skilled individuals who could be useful to their growing empire. This policy of terror was a deliberate psychological weapon. News of the complete destruction of cities like Samarkand and Bukhara spread far and wide, convincing many other cities to surrender without a fight. This saved Mongol lives and resources, allowing them to conquer vast territories with incredible speed. For those who defied him, the punishment was absolute, a lesson in the price of resistance. However, alongside this calculated cruelty, Genghis Khan was a pragmatic and intelligent ruler who understood the value of new ideas. He was not interested in simply destroying everything in his path. He was building an empire. As his armies conquered new lands, they absorbed new technologies and knowledge. He eagerly employed captured Chinese engineers to master siege warfare and Muslim administrators to help govern his vast territories. He recognized talent wherever he found it, regardless of the person's ethnicity or religion. This willingness to learn from conquered peoples was a key reason for his success. He was not just a destroyer. He was a builder who used the best tools he could find, no matter where they came from. One of his most enduring innovations was the creation of a sophisticated communication and supply system known as the YAM. This was a network of relay stations or horse posts set up across the empire. At each station, official messengers could find fresh horses, food, and shelter, allowing them to travel at incredible speeds. A message could cross the vast empire from one end to the other in a matter of weeks, a feat unheard of at the time. The YAM was the nervous system of the Mongol Empire, enabling rapid communication for military orders, intelligence reports, and administrative decrees. It also made travel safer for merchants and diplomats, fostering trade and contact between East and West. Genghis Khan also established a system of governance that promoted order and stability within his domain. He guaranteed religious freedom, understanding that trying to impose a single faith on such a diverse empire would only lead to rebellion. He created a written script for the Mongol language, allowing for the creation of official records and laws. He promoted trade, protecting the Silk Road and making it safer than it had been in centuries. While his conquests were built on unparalleled military force, the empire he created was held together by clever administration, efficient communication, and a surprising degree of tolerance. He was a conqueror who also knew how to rule. Even in his 60s, an advanced age for a warrior of his time, Genghis Khan's ambition did not wane. His final campaign was directed against the Western Xia, the Tangut kingdom he had first subdued years earlier. The Tanguts had refused to provide troops for his western campaign against the Khwarezmian Empire, an act of defiance the great Khan could not tolerate. In 1226, he personally led his army on a punitive expedition to make a final example of them. This campaign was conducted with the same meticulous planning and relentless force that had become his trademark. The Mongol army systematically crushed Tangut resistance, laying siege to their capital city and destroying their forces in the field. During this final campaign, in the autumn of 1226, Genghis Khan had a hunting accident. He was thrown from his horse and suffered serious internal injuries. Despite his failing health and a high fever, he pressed on with the siege of the Tangut capital. He knew that his time was short, and he was determined to see this last mission through to its conclusion. He continued to direct the war from his litter, his mind as sharp as ever. Before his death, he laid out a detailed plan for the final conquest of the Jin dynasty, a task he would leave to his sons and successors. His foresight extended beyond his own life, ensuring that his grand project of world conquest would continue after he was gone. In the summer of 1227, as the Tangut kingdom was on the verge of complete surrender, Genghis Khan died. The exact cause of his death remains a mystery, attributed to his hunting injuries, illness, or a combination of factors. His final orders were to keep his death a secret until the Tanguts had formally surrendered, to prevent them from taking heart and renewing their resistance. His command was obeyed. The Tangut king surrendered, and in accordance with the Khan's final will, the entire kingdom was annihilated, its people and culture erased from history as a final, brutal warning against disloyalty to the Mongol Empire. The location of Genghis Khan's burial is one of history's most enduring mysteries. His body was carried back to his homeland in Mongolia for a secret burial. According to legend, his funeral procession killed everyone and everything it encountered along the way to conceal the route. His soldiers then trampled the ground with thousands of horses to obliterate any trace of the grave, and a river was diverted to flow over the site. The guards who knew the location were later killed, and their families were also eliminated, ensuring the secret would be kept forever. To this day, the final resting place of the man who conquered the world remains unknown, a silent testament to the loyalty he commanded. The death of Genghis Khan did not signal the end of the Mongol Empire. In fact, it was just the beginning. Before he died, he had carefully planned for his succession, a testament to his foresight. He had divided the empire among his 4 sons from his wife, Borte Yochi, whose descendants would rule the Golden Horde in Russia, Chagatai, who would rule Central Asia, Tolui, who inherited the Mongol heartland, and his chosen successor, Ogadai, who would become the next great Khan. This division ensured a relatively peaceful transition of power, preventing the kind of civil war that had plagued so many other empires after the death of a strong founder. The Mongol war machine he had built was designed to outlive him. Under the leadership of his son Ogadai and his grandsons, the Mongol conquests continued with astonishing speed and success. Ogadai Khan established a permanent capital at Karakoram and oversaw the final destruction of the Jin dynasty in China. His armies pushed deep into Russia and Europe, reaching the gates of Vienna in a campaign that terrified Christendom. Later, his nephew, Kublai Khan, would complete the conquest of China, establishing the Yuan dynasty and becoming its first emperor. At its peak, the Mongol Empire was the largest contiguous land empire in world history, stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe, connecting civilizations in ways that had never been seen before. The legacy of Genghis Khan is complex and often controversial. In the lands he conquered, especially Persia and parts of China, he is remembered as a ruthless destroyer, a bringer of death and devastation on an unimaginable scale. Yet, in Mongolia, he is revered as a national hero, the father of the nation who united his people and gave them a place on the world stage. He was responsible for immense destruction, but he also created an empire that for a time brought peace, stability, and unprecedented levels of trade and cultural exchange across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica, or Mongol Peace, allowed for the safe passage of goods, ideas, technologies, and religions across continents. The world Genghis Khan made was profoundly different from the one he was born into. He shattered old empires and created a new global system. He broke down the walls that had separated civilizations for centuries, creating a bridge between East and West. The technologies, ideas, and even the diseases that traveled along the routes he secured would reshape the course of world history, contributing to the Renaissance in Europe and the forging of a more interconnected world. The outcast boy named Temüjin, who fought for survival on the harsh Mongolian steppe, had not only conquered the world of his time, but had also laid the foundations for the modern world to come.